The 17th of February 2025, you're welcome back. I don't like repeating the one thing, but events are so historical that it needs to be brought to the attention of the public because you won't hear it anywhere else. Now, I just heard somebody told me on the radio this morning a big sycamore tree in Ballynamuck in County Longford, on which the rebels in 1798 were hanged. They wanted to be shot like soldiers, but they hanged them. Died. I think there was up to hundreds of them hanged out of the tree, and it fell with the storm. It fell after all that time. If that is the truth, maybe it's just local folklore, I don't know. But certainly a tree would stand up that long like that. A sycamore tree is very, very long lasting. Imagine the history that it lived through. In any event, anyway, a piece of it should be taken out and framed or something done with it. No doubt it shouldn't be just sawed up for wood. In any event, what happened was in 1798 was the French helped the Americans get them over the line. They gave them the help to beat the British, and the British never forgave them. And then Cornwallis was beaten and he was let out. They didn't execute him, and he arrived back in Britain. And there's a good few years between the American Revolution and the French Revolution and the Irish Revolution of 1798. And Cornwallis was fully fed and watered and recovered, full of anger, and he arrived over to Ireland and he put down the 1798 rebellion. So that's that. Now the thing is that sometime after that, shortly, Napoleon went ploughing into Russia. We don't know why. And what was his reason? We don't know why. Hitler went ploughing into Russia. He thought he was going to form a great empire, and he soon got beaten over there as well. So now the Soviet Union is effectively gone. They'll tell you Putin is a dictator and all that, but when you see what's happening with US aid and the shenanigans in America, you can see that he's not any worse than anything you have on this side of the water. I watched every rally of Trump's when he went for election in 2016. I watched every single one, and I did that to get a handle on him because I had a very strong feeling he was going to be where he is today, and I was trying to figure out what he actually was made of. And I come to the conclusion that he was a most unusual person, like me in many ways, slightly maybe more ruthless than me, like me in many ways, extremely able person, and extremely able at choosing people and all of that, given the right chances. I'd say I'd be slightly better on assessing a character than he would, but over generally, he's a very, very able fella. So the thing about it is, he managed to do what he did. He did all the bulwark. He went through all the prosecutions. He'd done everything. And don't forget, Keir Starmer tried to oust him, tried to make sure he didn't get elected. And there is no doubt the British and the Europeans really hoped and thought that Kamala Harris would win the election. She's there on the media, and she's drunk a lot of the time now. It would have been a total disaster. She'd be a headless chicken. She'd put off a nuclear bomb, no problem. So, but they were hoping that she would get in. They never thought that the strength of the people, especially in America with their history of freedom, would beat them all, and that he'd get back in. It's a terrible shock to them. This is unbelievably sore shock to the whole lot of the US Democratic Party, the European Union, and Britain. So you have the European Union, you have the British, and you have the Democratic Party, which comprises still about 40% of voters in America, and you have Canada, all woke, all mad on that side. But still, there was enough of them there to put Trump in. Now, so Europe, since the Second World War, has been reliant on America to defend them and to defend their interests. They would go into all this woke stuff, and they are ultimately oppressors. The Europeans are ultimately oppressors. The Germans are oppressors. You look at the history of Germany, the idea of public human rights, individual rights doesn't exist. Any awakening of rights there was in the 1930s was quickly trampled on by Hitler with his crystal knocked, and he hanged and killed some of them with piano strings to keep any resistance down. So the idea of human liberty doesn't exist in Germany. It did exist in Britain with Magna Carta, but it's been watered down again, and the European oppression has been infecting the British. So now the Ukraine war was started. I went through all that to you. It shouldn't have happened. Then it got going, and then they thought they'd win, and they were talking about Ukraine winning up to recently. The whole media is simply an arm of the state, and they thought they were winning. They had US aid, they had all of this. They had all this thing of jailing people for calling boys him. You had prosecuting people for praying in their own homes, and all of this. This is the Starmer Labour government. But in the end of the day, you'd be making a big mistake if you think that the Labour movement, or the so-called People's Movement in England, the Labour movement, is not the same as the Conservatives when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to relations with the United States and relations with Russia. Now, they now prosecuted the Ukraine war. Why? They always need something to keep the Americans roped into Europe. They need something to justify the Americans being there. Supposing there had been no Ukraine war, and supposing there had been a peace deal with Russia, what real reason would the United States have to have troops stationed all over Europe? What would be the reason? I mean, they'd have no particular function. That's costing money to have them over there. So a big ulterior motive for the Ukraine war was to keep a battle going. And then Trump gets in and determines to do something that absolutely has terrified them. He decided to go it alone and ignore the whole damn lot of them, and go over and give them a dressing down about their freedom denying policies with J.D. Vance. And so now they say, oh my God, Trump is going to deal with the Russians. And they have the biggest fear of all, that they're going to be totally ignored. And they're like children now in the pram throwing their toys out. They're not adults, they're like children. Starmer has said the Ukraine will join NATO, knowing full well that's a red rag to the bull. Why is that? Hoping the Americans would go along with it, and that he'd keep the Americans in. And Trump is now accepting that Ukraine will not be part of Europe, of NATO. And therefore you have the present situation. Trump doesn't care about them anymore. That era has sort of ebbed. There are bigger things on. And as I've said many times before, they can't get anything right in Europe, and never will. Look here at home. I think it's 800 million more has been asked of the government by the developer of the Children's Hospital after him giving a price years ago. A simple little racket. You bid the lowest, you get the contract, and then you can't build it and you get more. I mean, any idiot would see that. Trump would see that away, 50 mile away. And yet there are people, Fianna Fáil and Fianna Gael supporters now who tell me, oh, Trump's a bully, because he won't let somebody give him a fake or an undercut or a wrong quote for a job and see it through. He makes sure you do it right. You can't get Ireland, Britain or Europe to do it right. There's not a hope. It's not within their capabilities to get it right. So now the story is, what's going to happen? There has been an emergency meeting in Paris with Macron and Britain and all attending, and now the whole idea now is to scuttle the peace talks. And to some way stop Trump. And the biggest way is doing that is get more violence in Ukraine, to try and keep Ukraine going. And what Keir Starmer has said, folks, this is crucial. I'll say it twice. He's saying Britain is prepared to put soldiers into Ukraine to support the peace process. Well, what peace process is it? He thinks he's going to be a part of it. Zelensky may be told what's happening, and he may be told this is what you have, take it or leave it, because he is still Ukraine. Maybe they might give them some view, but in the end of the day, the whole lot will be handed over. There it is. It'll be handed over to the EU and Zelensky on a plate. There it is. And they can do nothing about it. And they have to stop that at all costs. So who are the biggest protagonists that's going to try and oppose the EU? Britain will definitely try to upscuttle Trump, get troops into Ukraine. The Scandinavians are villains of all. They are villains out. They have destroyed their own country in Sweden. It's a hellhole. They are vicious people. The Norwegians are vicious. The Danes are sore at Trump over him claiming Greenland. And so they are going to try and upscuttle this deal big time, whatever deal is reached. Britain will try to upend it. France, they're a bit more diplomatic. There's a very strong relationship with France and the United States traditionally. Germany, well, Trump is half German anyway, so he knows what he's dealing with. But Germany will still try to keep it going. What's ultimately they're afraid of is that they won't have the backing of the United States to push their old junk, to oppress their people, to build their own stupid renewable energy, to impose their ban on cars, to do all this with the cover of the United States and not have to spend out billions on security, billions on military and all of that. And what Trump is more or less saying to them is, you look after yourself. I'm sick. That is the greatest motivator. Never underestimate the motivation of just wanting to get the hell out of here. You look at a place where if we say there's a day's in-service training for getting safety passes for work or something. It's great enthusiasm on to about 4:30. When it comes to about 4:45, you see everyone getting restless and they just want to go. And no amount of motivation will keep them on. They just want to get out and get on the road before the traffic starts. So the thing is that that's the sort of motivation that Trump has, and so has all the people he has around him who are ironclad loyal to him in this regard. So they are up the wall. I have never been so happy to see my ultimate enemy, the European Union, which I voted for and supported before I knew they were telling lies, on the ropes. Their economies are collapsing. So folks, that's not a bad video there in 11 minutes. Just understand that. The Scandinavian countries will try to get Trump into the war. Starmer, the bloody old idiot, his ideas, Britain's going to support the peace. He's going to have no say in the peace. And in the negotiations on the peace, it's every likelihood that Trump and Putin will agree that there'll be a certain amount of land conceded and that Russia will stay one side of that, and then that the Ukraine will stay the other. So I have no wee place here. We'll get the plate, for example. There'll be a wee bit of it cut off like this. And why will there be need peacekeepers here? If Russia agrees this is the line, what's Britain going to be doing? Or the peace? Are they going to be stopping the Ukrainians firing at the Russians? And how are they going to do that? Will they shoot them? Are they going to stop the Ukrainians firing back at are they going to stop the Russians firing back at Ukraine? What is going to be the function of this line, or what is the function of peacekeepers? This is the usual old sick parlance, the old sick language of the wasters, of the left. Oh, peacekeepers, Well, I'll tell you, peacekeepers cannot go into the conflict zone without sorry, my camera's wobbling. Without a motion passed by the United Nations General Assembly, of which Russia is a member. Russia has a veto on it. So Keir Starmer is not going to get anyone in there without the consent of Russia. It's possible Russia might consent to the Irish, maybe Brazilian, maybe I don't know, maybe some Africans or that, but they won't consent to the Norwegians or anybody else. The Norwegians, the Scandinavians join NATO against Russia's wishes, and if they think they're getting back into the Ukraine, they're making a big mistake. The policy of the Russian army is when you meet mercenaries as opposed to Ukrainian people fighting, you kill them. There's no body bags coming home, there's no funerals, nothing, they never get back. You're killed, just shot straight away. So the thing about it is that's a fair assessment of the story, folks. They're squirming. Starmer is part of this British old deep state thing. He's part of that big time. He takes his orders big time, and but how far that'll go, I don't know. So von der Leyen is in on the job. She's going to huff and puff as well, and so it's very, very interesting what will take place. Very interesting. Now, the fact is that it's the United States put most of the money into the Ukraine war. It wasn't Europe. They did put in some. They put in most of the money. The fact is Trump has said there are 3 years now trying to fix it, and they didn't fix it. And the American Democratic Party didn't fix it either, and he's going to fix it. And this proves my point. The Ukraine war is not about the Ukraine at all. They don't care about the soldiers in Ukraine. The Ukraine war is all about keeping America pinned down, keep America paying the piper, while its own people go hungry out in areas of the states where they have nothing to eat at night, keeping them pinned down and trying for Britain and Europe and the EU to manipulate America, manipulate their great resources into working as they want. And they are miles and miles away from President Trump's ideology, and he's going to drop them like a hot potato. The land will be gone in Ukraine. There'll be a peace thing there. I don't think there'll be any peacekeeping forces needed at all. Trump will not allow American troops to be part of the peacekeeping force. And if there is any, as I repeat again, it can only be done by a resolution of the UN Security Council over which Russia has a veto. Okay, folks, it's interesting times. 16 minutes, I didn't do too bad there. I probably left something out. Wait, let's see. What we can finish up with is that the European countries are all about mass migration. Democratic-run America was all about mass migration. If they really cared for this integrity of their territory, the sovereignty of the territory, they wouldn't allow open borders. How can you have sovereignty when you have open borders? So why would they be worried about defending the Ukraine, which has borders? Why do they not acknowledge those borders? If borders mean nothing, why are they worried about Russian borders being on Ukraine? So this proves my point. This is all about something entirely different. It's all about, the way I put it, keeping this sham going. These are babies with no clothes. They're not emperors with no clothes. And that mad Starmer, they really need to be cut down, and they will be cut down and taken down to measure very fast. Good luck, folks. Comment underneath. Bye.